Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's program and another installment in the Alumni Continuing Education Series, also known as ACES. For those that don't know me, my name is Luke Petoskey. I graduated from John Carroll in 2022 and 2024, and I serve as the Alumni Engagement Specialist at JCU. On behalf of myself and my alumni relations team, we are grateful for those in attendance virtually this evening. And we're also grateful to our panelists who will be leading tonight's presentation and conversation. If this is your first time attending one of these, allow me to deliver some brief background info. The Alumni Continuing Education Series was established in the spring of 2013 by the Office of Alumni Relations here at John Carroll. And it was established because John Carroll University produces lifelong learners eager to stay engaged with their alma mater, like you kind folks. These programs have traditionally provided enrichment opportunities for alumni and friends through expertise provided by John Carroll University administration, faculty, staff, and members of the John Carroll alumni community. Before we introduce our guests for this evening, I have a couple of housekeeping items. First, we encourage you to view this program in full screen mode. Tonight's program is a webinar, so none of our guests in attendance should be visible on screen or able to have their audio picked up unless you are presenting something this evening. So wherever you're tuning in tonight, please relax and enjoy. Second, following the presentations, we will have an opportunity for questions and answers for our presenters and or Dr. Welki. You may ask those at any time during the program if they come up by utilizing the Q&A feature or the chat feature of Zoom. I will be able to curate them to be brought up at the end of the program and will ask as many appropriate questions as time will allow for. And lastly, before we begin our program, I want to simply communicate a few updates on JCU as we've continued to have a lot of positive momentum rolling on campus. Firstly, we've welcomed our largest freshman class in 5 years, and every metric is up from transfer students to international students to students from out of state. So that's good to hear. Facilities, if you've ever visited our campus over the last couple of years, you'll likely have noticed a lot of hard hats and a lot of cranes with things moving along for some time. In addition to the newly renovated atrium in the DJ Lombardo Student Center and the new nursing simulation labs, there's also Dolan and Pacelli Hall renovations. And the one that surprised some people is the renovation of the in-between. While this has been a hub for generations, some people know it as the Rap Bar. I can assure you, even if you've recently graduated and haven't seen the new in-between, I promise you will not recognize it. The soon-to-be fully constructed Athletic Wellness and Event Center had its final steel beam put in place recently, and it marks a major milestone for John Carroll's 100,000 square foot facility that's going to serve as a fantastic space for our athletics teams. Griselli Library is under construction as well, and actually tomorrow we are set to unveil new exercise science labs in the DJ Lombardo Student Center. So that's another exciting sign of progress. These are going to greatly enhance our exercise science and healthcare programs. And then lastly, today, Dr. Welki was here for this, as well as many students. We revealed our new Lobo mascot. So Lobo is back. If you want to check out how that went, there's some videos on the John Carroll U and JCU Sports social media platforms. So if you have the chance to check that out after the program, please do. And just as there are exciting developments happening on our campus, there are students constantly pushing the boundaries in pursuit of knowledge in a wide variety of topics and issues like the one we're going to address tonight. For instance, the Cleveland Browns' stadium plans have been in the news a lot recently. And while we won't be taking a particular stance on this, at least I won't, tonight is a pursuit of knowledge and truth that will be showcased by a number of panelists. And with all this in mind, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Andy Welki and his students to this virtual program. Dr. Welki and his students will provide insights, discussion, and analysis of stadium funding for each of the NFL's teams. And, This person doesn't need any introduction, but I'll do so anyways. Dr. Andy Welki. He's been an associate economics and finance professor at JCU for the last 42 years or so. He arrived at John Carroll in September of 1982 and became a professor in the econ department. He's a four-time recipient of the Wasmer Award, which recognizes teaching excellence in the Boulder School of Business. And if you didn't hear recently, Dr. Welke entered the John Carroll Athletics Hall of Fame after serving the last 35 or so years as the faculty athletics representative. I could go on, but I'm going to give our panelists some time to discuss. So, Dr. Welke, thank you to you and your students for joining us once again. And the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Luke, for the kind words. We're excited about the opportunity to be here tonight. This program really is facilitated by me, but all the work has been done by the students that you'll see present tonight. Put it into context, it's an outgrowth of a sports econ class that we're currently finishing up. The area of stadiums becomes a big issue. To frame it for the audience, this is not going to be a deep dive on whether they should or shouldn't be. We were just trying to get some perspective on how various stadiums around the United States in different geographic areas and different time periods have been built. And so what you'll hear about are 27 sort of small plate helpings of various stadiums in the NFL. Conversations around baseball fields could have taken place, conversations around basketball arenas could have taken place, but we thought football was appropriate because that seems to strike at everyone's heart. And so without any further ado, we'll start by leading off with Denver, a recent visit for our Browns fans.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Anthony Markello, and I decided to do Empower Field at Mile High, which is where the Denver Broncos play. So some background. For context, the Denver Broncos used to play at the original Mile High Stadium, which was around from 1960 to 2000. It was demolished in 2001 after they built their new stadium, and they actually use the space where the old Mile High Stadium was for parking now. And so that's similar to kind of what I'm from Buffalo. That's similar to what the Bills are going to do, but I guess you'll hear more about that later. So the construction began August 17th, 1999. It opened on August 11th, 2001. The stadium cost $400.9 million, which was a lot back then, but now compared to some of the other stadiums that are being built, it doesn't seem like much. 25% of the cost was covered by the team. By team owners, and then 75% of the cost was paid for by the state. As you can see in that picture, it is an open air stadium. So some current renovations that are going on. They spent $100 million in renovations in the 2023 offseason. So this just happened. This was for a new scoreboard, updates to the elevators and the team stores. The scoreboard increased in size by 70%. As you can see in those pictures, that's the old scoreboard up top, and then down below is the new one. It's absolutely massive. It's the tallest scoreboard in North America now. The scoreboard is 72 feet high and 225 feet wide. Even though it's the tallest scoreboard in North America, somehow it's only the fifth largest scoreboard in the NFL. I think that's because a lot of the other ones are wider. And the team store expanded by 25% or 3,000 square feet. And most of the money, and it's the most money spent on renovations in stadium history. For the Broncos have spent $30 million more on a different renovation project that they did in 2013. So they spent around $530 million in total on the stadium. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Nice lead into Highmark.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Noonan, and tonight I will be presenting to you all Highmark Stadium, home of the best team in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills. As for stadium history, Highmark Stadium was formerly known as Rich Stadium, and its groundbreaking ceremony was conducted in Orchard Park, New York on April 4th, 1972, about 30 minutes from downtown Buffalo. The first game was played on August 17th, 1973. The funding of the stadium was hastened by former Bills owner Ralph Wilson, who was looking to relocate the team to Memphis or other locations. Though Buffalo was able to keep the Bills through the naming of the stadium being Rich Products, so Rich Stadium, and also the stadium was primarily funded through public means as Erie County issued bonds. As for stadium utilization, Highmark Stadium is primarily used for Buffalo Bills home games, which occur 9 to 10 times per year, and also hosts typically 1 to 4 concerts per year. This past April, there was a 2-night Luke Combs country concert that you can see in the screen on the left. And then also on the screen to the right, Highmark Stadium annually hosts the National Buffalo Wing Festival. As for the future of Highmark Stadium, the Bills are getting a new stadium right next to the current one, which will be completed by August of 2026. The state of New York has agreed to fund $850 million of the now $2 billion price tag of the new stadium through taxpayer dollars. The new stadium will be owned by the Erie County Stadium Corporation, and the Bills will pay rent. And this new stadium will experience private seat licensing along with an increase in utilization of the space. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Staying in the sort of AFC East, Gillette Stadium.
Thank you, Dr. Welki. My name is Riley Brombos, and today I'm going to be kind of talking about Gillette Stadium here, home of the New England Patriots and 6-time Super Bowl champions. So more about Gillette Stadium. So they're originally the old Foxborough, was built in 2002. Then in around 2000, that's when the construction began for that stadium. It cost Robert Kraft, who fully funded it, $325 million. Stated before, home of the New England Patriots. So from about the 2000s and 2010s is when a lot of their winning came under Tom Brady. So known for that most notably. They've also held a lot of soccer events, including the MLS Cup 2002, some FIFA Women's World Cup games, as well as Copa America. They've had over 100 concerts held there. In the future, to end out their season, they're going to have 2 more home games against the Buffalo Bills and Chargers, as well as a couple of concerts lined up going into next summer and to end this year with Metallica.
Thanks, Riley. Time for someplace warm, Miami. Is Mr. Petitjean there? Okay, well, let's see what he had to share. Basically, the Miami history was to replace the Orange Bowl and another stadium that was financed entirely by private funds. That's a theme that we want to be paying attention to. It was designed to be a multi-purpose stadium, which is another issue that we should always think about in the stadium construction space. How many times are things going to be used? Future events, it's a global destination, and it's hosted multiple Super Bowls and international matches, and it'll be a future site of the World Cup when the World Cup comes. And another important thing I think we should notice here is that the NFL, conscious of their environmental footprint, builds sustainability options into many of their spaces. Time to head north, back to the colder climes for MetLife.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian Stanley. I did MetLife Stadium. Thank you. So MetLife Stadium opened up in 2010, replacing the previous New York Giants Stadium, and is now home to both the New York Giants and the New York Jets. And I believe it is one of 2 stadiums to host 2 teams. It costs around $1.8 billion to construct, and both the New York Giants and the Jets threw in $800 million of their own money. So this was a privately funded stadium. And the capacity of the stadium holds around 82,000 people. Looking into other uses beyond just football, in the future, in 2026, it will host one of the FIFA World Cup matches, just like we talked about with Miami, and has even hosted some outdoor ice hockey games, notably New Jersey Devils versus Philadelphia Flyers. And there have been a lot of concerts here. Many famous artists such as Taylor Swift, the Rolling Stones, Eagles, and a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next will be their dreaded rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hi, I'm Garrett Sparks. I had some technical difficulties, so I'm on my roommate's computer. But I had Lincoln Financial Field. They are the home of the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as Temple University, which I did not know. The field is also used for soccer events, as well as concerts and some youth football camps. So some history about the stadium. It replaced Veterans Stadium, which you can see down there on the left. So the stadium of Lincoln Financial was presented to the public in October of 2000. In August 3rd of 2003, the first event was held. It was actually a soccer game, Manchester United versus Barcelona. And then the Eagles held their first home game in August 22nd of 2003 in their new stadium. So their funding and renovations. So the cost of the stadium was $512 million. They received $139.6 million of that from Lincoln Financial for the naming rights. They got another $188 million in public funding, and the rest was from selling the stadium's builder's license, which essentially gave those people who bought those the right to buy season tickets or just tickets every season. And then in 2013, they announced their renovation plans, which were $131 million worth, only 10 years after building the stadium. It was for new video boards. They added Wi-Fi and some more seating.
Thanks, Garrett. Off to Jerry World.
Thank you, Dr. Welki. As Dr. Welki just said, we're going to Jerry World, or now known as AT&T Stadium. So the cost and funding of the stadium when Jerry World was initially announced in 2006 and was being built over the course of 3 years to 2009. It costed at an initial price tag of $650 million, but once it was said and done, the stadium ended up costing $1.15 billion. And that came between three people. 45% came from the Cowboys, 42% came from the city of Arlington, and 13% came as a subsidy from the NFL. And to continue to fund the stadium, there were two bond issues worth a cumulative amount of around $473 million to continue to finance the stadium. And that was done through raising the city sales tax by 0.5%, hotel and motel taxes, and the car rental. And additionally, as the Cowboys leased the stadium from the city of Arlington, they paid around $167,000 per game for 30 years. So for the future, as one of the largest events was just held at Jerry World, was the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight. Because it has such an expansive capacity, it seats regularly 80,000 people, but can get up to 100,000 people. It allows for large venue and historical events to take place, as the round of 16 game for the 2026 FIFA World Cup will take place there, and in anticipation of that, they will have nearly a $300 million renovation.
Thanks, Mr. Seuss. For those people that might be planning to see the next Browns game, you'll have a chance to hear about that place.
Hello, my name is Jacob Height, and I'll be talking about six-time Super Bowl champions, Pittsburgh Steelers. So what is the history of A.C.E.S Stadium? A.C.E.S Stadium was completed in 2001 and was the new home for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this name of the stadium was Heinz Field originally and had a capacity of 68,400. This new stadium replaced Three Rivers Stadium, which was the same property and shared with the Pirates organization. When Pittsburgh being the Steel City, they used around 12,000 tons of steel for their production. So how was the stadium financed? The original cost was $281 million, which is a lot less than a lot of other stadiums on this list. This was a combination of public and private funding. Most cities use a sin tax as a way for funding, but the Allegheny County increased hotel tax so tourism would help fund and would not increase the burden on their own residents. So who utilizes the stadium? The Steelers aren't the only organization that uses this. Pitt Panthers moved here after their stadium, Pitt Stadium, was demolished in the 90s, and now they share a home together. And the practice facility is also shared. The Whippeal Championships, which is the Western Pennsylvania High School Athletic Association, are also played here. And this provides a great experience for high school athletes. Summer concerts are also here to draw massive crowds that PPG, where their hockey team, cannot draw that many people. So for instance, Taylor Swift has the highest record of attendance with 73,000 fans at A.C.E.S Stadium.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jake. Next will be a stadium sort of intertwined with Browns history, our beautiful Baltimore Ravens.
Thank you, Dr. Welki. So my name is Owen Halpin. I'm going to be taking us over the Baltimore Ravens Stadium and M&T Bank, as it's known. So history, it actually opened September 6, 1998. Fun fact, too, it was built on an old closed piano factory that closed in the Great Recession during that time. It's in Baltimore, as I said, next to Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And the construction, it was built as a dedicated home for NFL's Baltimore Ravens, replacing Memorial Stadium, designed by Populous, formerly HOK Sport, and it costed $220 million at the time of construction. So financing the stadium, public and private partnership, the MSA issued bonds to finance construction, repayment via revenue from stadium operations, and the Maryland Lottery. Fun fact, the Ravens paid an upfront fee to handle operational costs and minimal tax increases due to the revenue generated from ticket sales, events, and sponsorships. So the current uses, obviously NFL games being the most common one, concerts such as Beyonce, U2, and Ed Sheeran, college football neutral-sited games, and occasional Army versus Navy matchups, which are very popular on the East Coast. And then last but not least, we have soccer matches, international friendlies, and club games are hosted there.
I guess another little fun fact for the audience is that the Maryland Lottery was mentioned, and a John Carroll alum, if I'm not mistaken, is the person who runs the Maryland Lottery. Heading south to Cincinnati.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Strangis, and I had the Paycor Stadium. So Paycor is located in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it opened in 2000 as Paul Brown Stadium, but it was renamed Paycor Stadium in 2021. The stadium was primarily built to serve as a home for the NFL's Cincinnati Bengals, replacing the Riverfront Stadium. The stadium's construction was funded through a combination of both public and private sources, with significant investment from the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. The total cost of this project was around $455 million, with funding from bonds backed by a combination of taxes and public revenue, alongside contributions from the Bengals organization. Now, beyond football, Paycor Stadium is a multi-use venue. It hosts major concerts such as Taylor Swift and various community events such as the Queen City Classic Chess Tournament. The stadium has become a key part of the city's sports and entertainment landscape, drawing thousands of visitors each year and boosting local businesses. And looking to the future, Paycor Stadium is committed to enhancing fan experiences and incorporating advanced technologies. They just announced that they are planning to renovate the stadium, totaling to be an estimated $1.25 billion, starting with a new $20 million locker room, which was finished constructing this past summer, and hopes to continue to serve as a hub for both sports and community events in the Cincinnati region. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna. It's Mr. Liggett with us tonight.
Hello. My name's Kevin, and I'm here to talk about what you've all been waiting for, the Cleveland Browns, the real America's team. So in 1995, the original owner of the Browns decided to move to Baltimore, as most of you guys are probably aware. The next year, the stadium was demolished, and because of a lawsuit that occurred, the name and stripes of the Browns stayed in Cleveland. So the construction of the new stadium began in 1997, which was funded by both Cleveland sin tax, which is alcohol and tobacco products, and also contributions from the NFL, given the fact that the Browns were treated basically as an expansion team. So once it was finished, they had their home opener against the Steelers, and if you want to know the score, they lost 40-something to 0. So for a few of the events that happens, of course, you got Browns games, and then you also have concerts. You also have Ohio State versus Michigan and Lake Erie Monsters for hockey. Every once in a while, they have outdoor events. And then you also have high school football.
Thanks, Kevin. We're heading west.
Or actually, there's
I apologize, Kevin. My bad.
So for the future, so recently, the Browns announced that they're going to create a new dome stadium in Brook Park, Ohio. The mayor of Cleveland argued that it would lose the city 30 million annually and also disproportionately affect communities of color and low-income residents, as well as weaken public assets in Cleveland. It's estimated to cost about 2.4 billion, and the owners of the Browns are looking for half of that cost to be covered by both public money, half of that cost to be covered by public money, both from the state and both from local governments.
Thanks, Kevin. Sorry about that. Now we're heading west.
Thank you, Dr. Welki. So I'm Roger Simon, and I'll be talking about Soldier Field, home of the Chicago Bears. So it originally opened back in 1924, making it the oldest stadium in the NFL. It originally cost $13 million to construct, and it was financed by the South Park Commission, which is now known as the Chicago Park District, meaning that the stadium is actually owned by the city. And back in 2002, 2003, it went under some renovations. Still some aspects of the old stadium in the new stadium, but it is a brand new stadium. It cost them about $632 million to renovate, of which $432 million came from taxpayers, and the Bears and the NFL contributed about $200 million. So who uses it? So the stadium is home to the Chicago Bears, like I said, and recently the Chicago MLS team, the Chicago Fire, moved into the stadium back in 2020. So that's also their home field. It has been a host of many sporting events throughout its history, its long history, including a men's World Cup, a women's World Cup, many international friendly games for soccer, a NASCAR event back in the 1950s, as well as other sporting events, outdoor hockey games, and other sports. It's also been outside of the sports sphere, home to speeches by former President FDR and for their former activist Martin Luther King, as well as Pope John Paul's 1979 mass that he held at the stadium and 2 Republican national conventions.
Thanks, Roger. Up to Minnesota.
So in Minnesota, it's a fairly new stadium. The funding was approved in early 2012 for almost $1 billion. And in mid 2016, it was opened after 2 years of construction. So the funding was sourced from a lot of different places, about a third of it from the state and the city, another third from the Vikings themselves, and then the last 550 million from these different contributors. U.S. Bank, the largest one, because that is what the stadium is named after. And they also used a lot of electronic pull tabs, which is the revenue. They used the revenue from that, the electronic pull tabs, which were legalized in Minnesota in 2012, right when this project was announced. And some other uses for this stadium. In 2017, it became the first stadium to host the Summer X Games, and that event agreement was extended to 2019 and 2020 after its first year of success. In 2018, it hosted its first Super Bowl, and the second by Minneapolis, but the first one was by the old stadium. The U.S. Bank Stadium also hosted the NCAA Men's Final Four in 2019, setting a record, and they also were awarded a bid to become the first NFL stadium to host the NCAA D1 Wrestling Championship in 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Time to go to the frozen tundra.
So, hello everyone. I'm Jack Finucane, and talking about the potentially future 2025 Super Bowl champions, the Green Bay Packers. So, Lambeau Field. So, it was built in 1957, replacing the old City Stadium that was built in 1919. Earl Lambeau basically bought the team in 1919 for $500 from the Indian Packing Company. That's where they got their name. He ultimately renamed the field once it was built in 1965 in his dedication. And it was actually the first stadium built specifically for an NFL franchise, unlike other stadiums that were used for multi-use, like the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium for the Browns and Indians. And at the time, it cost $960,000 in 1957. And over the time, there's been $430 million in renovations gone into Lambeau Field, and over that time, about 57% have been through public funding and 42% from private financing. So who exactly plays there? Packers play there, of course. A capacity at the time is 81,000, and they don't really host a ton of other outside events. They will occasionally host high school and college football. They've hosted a European soccer match in the past with Bayern Munich and Manchester City in 22, and they don't host a ton of concerts with the small surrounding population in the area. But for the future, there have been various renovations since its inception in the span of 2001 to 2003. There was a $925 million expansion plan there to increase seats by about 12,000. Through that funding, it was about $2 million in stock sales, 0.5% taxes, and also PSL fees. And it helped increase seating, like I mentioned, as well as bettering the facilities. 2012 to 2015, then again, another stock sale. The NFL actually granted them money for the renovations as well to keep the integrity of the historical stadium. And then also the money from internally funding of about 104 million dollars as well.
It's Jack. JJ.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. I'm JJ Cuddy, talking about Ford Field of the Detroit Lions. So it was built in 2002 to replace the Pontiac Silverdome. Took about 32 months to complete their construction, and the Detroit Lions play there. So it can seat about 65K for football, 85K for basketball, and some other events that happened there were the 2009 NCAA Final Four, Rolling Stones concert, WWE WrestleMania, and the 2006 Super Bowl when the Steelers took over the Seahawks. So how was this funded? Well, it was with a $500 million deal with 51% paid by Wayne County and the other remainder paid by the William Clay Ford family.
Freeze, JJ. It happens. How about we do the following? We'll go next to Jacksonville.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily and today I'll be talking about Everbank Stadium. So Everbank Stadium was originally built in 1928 and served as a stadium for high school and college football games. In 1994, the stadium was demolished and rebuilt in time for the Jacksonville Jaguars' inaugural season first game, which was held on August 18th, 1995. Over time, the stadium has undergone several major upgrades. For example, in 2014, they installed the world's biggest scoreboard at the time. So moving on to funding, in 1994, the reconstruction cost around $121 million, with the majority of the funding coming from the city of Jacksonville. Since then, the city and the Jaguars organization have shared the renovations and maintenance costs. In 2014, the total renovation cost was about $63 million, and the Jaguars contributed $20 million of it. There are current plans for a $1.4 billion renovation. It is still being determined how this will be split between the city and the team, but the city says they will leverage bed tax, state grants, tourism-related taxes, and other public revenue sources. And for utilization, Everbank Stadium serves as a home field for the Jacksonville Jaguars NFL games and has held the tradition for the Gator Bowl since 1928. It hosts the annual Florida-Georgia rivalry game and is a premier concert venue for big artists. Finally, international men's and women's soccer teams are hosted here, and it has been considered for the FIFA World Cup. Thank you.
Time to move to the headquarters of the NCAA, Indianapolis.
Hello, my name is Jordan Suvak. I'll be covering Lucas Oil Stadium, which is home to the Colts, but not exclusively to the Colts. It was built by the Indiana Stadium and Convention Building Authority. A fun fact is that it's a seven-member board. 5 of the members are appointed by the governor, and 2 of the members are appointed by the mayor. So all members of the board are appointed. The total cost was $720 million. That was funded with taxes. The Colts put up $100 million of their own, and $666 million were in municipal bonds. And I know you're thinking that that doesn't add up, and that is because as of 2021, the Lucas Oil Stadium is still $635 million in debt, 13 years after opening, and it's projected to be fully paid off by 2037. So taxpayers are still contributing to that debt. As I said, it was opened in August 16th, 2008, and the naming rights were bought by Lucas Oil Stadium on a 20-year contract for upwards of $122 million. And as I said, it is utilized by many, many people. I'm sure if you are an avid sports fan like me watching on TV, you have definitely watched a game played in Lucas Oil Stadium. It's home to the Colts, men and women's college basketball, college football games. The NFL Combine is hosted there, and it's home to concerts and conventions. And in 2024, the first ever NFL stadium to host Olympic swimming trials was held at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Thanks, Jordan. Heading south, another automobile company in play.
Hello, guys. Thank you, Dr. Welki. So yeah, so now I'm going to talk about Nashville's pride and the home of the Tennessee Titans. So this is the Nissan Stadium. So built back in the late 20th century, the Nissan Stadium is located in Nashville and opened in 1999. So just in time to welcome the Tennessee Titans, fresh from their rebranding from the Houston Oilers. So with a cost of $290 million at the time, which would equate to $530 million in today's money, it's got a capacity of 69,000 and was funded by a mix of public and private resources. So to be precise, it was 87% of publicly funded and for a 13% private contribution. So the Nissan Stadium is also known to have the largest selection of beers in all of the NBA stadiums, which makes it my favorite. There are no renovations planned for this stadium, as a new Nissan Stadium is currently being built at an estimated cost of $2 billion, featuring a massive glass dome. Its construction is due to finish in 2027, and well, will be one, if not the most advanced NFL stadium when it finishes construction. So to give you an idea of what the finished product would look like, on the last slide, I included an image of the simulation of what it would appear like. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Heading to home of a variety of John Carroll alums, Houston.
Hi, my name's Charlie, and I'm going to talk about NRG Stadium, which is home to the Houston Texans. The Texans moved from the Astrodome to NRG in 2002 when it was finished, with a price tag of $352 million and space to hold over 72,000 fans. It was actually the first NFL stadium to have a retractable roof, which makes it super flexible for all kinds of events, including the Houston Rodeo, the Texas Bowl, many of the United States men's national soccer teams matches, and Mexico's national football team friendlies, as well as other events. So how was it all paid for? Well, the funding was a mix of public and private money. Most of it came from public financing, specifically a hotel tax and a rental car tax. The rest came from private contributions, including the Texans and the NFL. As for who made it all happen, the Harris County Houston Sports Authority oversaw the whole project, and the Harris County Commissioner's Court played a big role too. They are the ones who approved those taxes and made the funding possible.
Thanks, Charlie. Mason.
All right, hello. My name is Mason Balla. I'm a senior finance major and economics minor here at John Carroll, and I am presenting on Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This is still a relatively new stadium as it was built in 2017. You can keep it on the first slide.
I apologize.
And it was previously known as the Georgia Dome, and it was located in downtown Atlanta in the Centennial Olympic Park. The Falcons use it. The Atlanta United Football Club uses it and has other purposes such as concerts. The SEC championship game was here, and some other like March Madness games. I think it was the semifinals.
Thanks, Mason.
The Falcons owner, who is Arthur Blank, he was the co-founder of Home Depot. He contributed $800 million worth of his own money for private funding, and then there was $200 million from hotel and motel taxes, and then the rest of it will just be paid off as the stadium gets utilized by a certain amount of people.
Thanks, Mason.
The stadium has a 360-degree halo screen, as you can see on the picture on the right and left, spanning around the top of the stadium. And this covers 63,000 square feet of screening. And the roof is also retractable, as you can see on the left side. It actually closes and opens like a camera lens when it takes a photo. So I think that's a pretty important part and a cool little feature of the stadium. It is also LEED platinum certified, that is leadership in energy and environmental design. They utilize rainwater runoff, and then they also have some other rainwater harvesting and energy efficient systems. And it also is catered toward fan experiences with a multitude of seatings like standing, sitting, suites, and luxury. And they also try to cater toward a Atlanta-based food culture down there. So I think it's a pretty nice area.
Thanks, Mason.
Thank you.
How's everybody doing? My name is Sean Franger, and I had the pleasure of looking into the home of the New Orleans Saints, which is the Caesars Superdome. So a little bit about the historical background of the Caesars Superdome. The Superdome first broke ground in 1966 after passing a legislation in Louisiana to find the funding from Syntax as well as issuance of bonds. And after the completion of the construction was done, doors first opened on August 3rd, and this quickly followed after with their first NFL preseason game shortly after. So this begun recently a 5-year, $560 million renovation project that occurred back in 2019 that was just finished this previous season in 2024. A lot of the funding actually came from the Saints organization themselves, while the rest came from the LSED and as well as state legislation. So in total, the project looked to preserve the iconic exterior of the stadium that's been there since its founding, while increasing fan experience on the inside, and most of it was towards interior decorations, which included things like wireless upgrades, 2 40-yard bars, which I did have to look up, that they weren't exactly in the 40-yard line, they are actually 40-yard long, 3 new atriums, and some new premium spaces, such as like suites and things like that.
Anything else you want to add there about how it's used, Sean?
So the utilization of the stadium, it is the New Orleans Saints home stadium, obviously, and it's been quoted recently at about $600 million in annual income impact to the state of Louisiana, which hopefully we can see that when we bring the dome to Brook Park here in Cleveland. So because of this, it's able to host a multitude of major sporting events, such as the NCAA Final Four, the College Football Playoff, some major boxing events, including some of Muhammad Ali's famous fights, things like WrestleMania, and the annual Bayou Classic, which is a game between Grambling State University and Southern University. On top of this, it hosts a bunch of major concerts, such as some very notable ones being the Rolling Stones and 3 nights of Taylor Swift's Eras tour that she just went on. In fact, it also was the host to Pope John Paul in 1987 when he addressed a crowd of about 80,000 in the Superdome, the National Republican Convention, the Endymion Extravaganza, which is a Mardi Gras party that they host every year in the stadium. And it was also able to be used as a refuge of last resort during Hurricane Katrina, which hit this city of New Orleans very hard. So it was nice to see it was able to be utilized for a good thing during a very terrible time. And to cap it all off, the Super Bowl this year will be hosted in New Orleans, so I'll be excited to watch that.
Thanks, Sean. We've heard a lot about Taylor Swift throughout our little journey of stadiums. We might as well go to her second home, Arrowhead.
Hello, I'm Philip Gorn, and I'll be talking about Arrowhead Stadium. So a brief history of the stadium. So it's located in Kansas City, Missouri, and it's a home field for the Kansas City Chiefs. It officially opened on August 12, 1972, in which it hosted its first NFL preseason game. And it has a stadium capacity of 76,416 seats, in which that makes the 25th largest overall stadium and the 4th also largest NFL stadium. So the construction funding of the stadium is that it generates $28.8 million in tax revenue, in which that includes direct and indirect tax revenue. And it was funded primarily through like a combination of both public and private efforts. And then there was the renovations that took place from 2007 to 2010, which costed approximately $375 million, in which approximately $250 million of those dollars was funded from public contributions, and approximately $125 million of those dollars was funded from private contributions. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Heading out to the place where a John Carroll alum is currently the GM, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Are you with us, Noah? Okay. We'll have just so you know, Las Vegas just recently built Allegiant Stadium, started in 2015, and it was a move of a franchise to Las Vegas. Some would argue part of that was tied to the expansion of gambling, and it created its own little interesting controversy as to whether you should have an NFL franchise there. Once again, you see this blend of public funds and private funds, some of it coming from obviously the Davis family, which had a long history in Oakland, which is the migration of the Oakland team to Las Vegas. Not unusual for teams to threaten to move if they don't get stadium conditions that they enjoy. The users, now obviously the Raiders, you have other franchises, and as you can imagine, it's just another asset in the architecture of entertainment that lives in the Las Vegas space. Time to head to SoFi.
So hello everybody, my name is Carson Belfour, and I was tasked with SoFi Stadium. So SoFi Stadium is recently opened in 2020. It was privately financed by the Rams owner, Stan Kroenke. He funded the whole project of about $5 billion, which it ended up being around $6 billion, which is the most expensive stadium in the NFL. It sits in the centerpiece of a 298-acre Hollywood park with many attractions, hotels popping up around the stadium, and has a capacity of around 70,000 people. So who utilizes it? It is home to two teams, just like MetLife. It is Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers. The other teams are other hosts of SoFi Stadium. They hosted the Super Bowl in 2022, Super Bowl 56. They hosted the College Football National Championship in 2023. They hosted the CONCACAF Finals in 2023, and they've also hosted big name concerts like a lot of stadiums have: Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Metallica. Moving forward, they will host the 2026 FIFA World Cup, as well as the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. They're going to be the opening and closing ceremonies there, as well as the swimming events.
Thanks, Carson. Levi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Braden Young. I'll be covering Levi Stadium. So Levi Stadium started construction in April 2012, lasting a little over 2 years into July 2014. This was replacing Candlestick Park. It's located in Santa Clara, California, and is renowned for its sustainability milestones, being the first professional football stadium to have the LEED LEED Gold certification, which is one of the fantastic sustainability, measures. And this also hosts a 27,000 square foot green roof. So funding, Levi Stadium totally cost $1.3 billion, with $950 million of this coming from bonds from Goldman Sachs. This is a public group separate from the city of Santa Clara that took these out. And they're actually 15 years early on their debt repayments, saving over $100 million in interest because of all the money that this venue has been able to generate. There's $114 million from public funding, with $35 million coming from a 2% increase in hotel taxes, and then $263 million coming from the NFL Stadium Fund and the 49ers. So some key events hosted. Of course, it's the host of the San Francisco 49ers. Also hosts an array of college football games like the 2019 National Championship. Concerts, like usual. This is also another victim of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. And it also holds Ed Sheeran and Beyonce. You can also rent Levi Stadium out for corporate meetings, weddings, or banquets, which I found really interesting. And in the fiscal year 2022, it generated over $251 million and has contributed over $2 billion to the local economy over the past 2 decades.
Thanks for sharing the investment info. Southwest, State Farm, Arizona. Go,
Hi,
Jack.
everyone. This is State Farm Stadium, home to the Arizona Cardinals. It's located in Glendale, Arizona, which is around 40 minutes away from Phoenix and 50 minutes from Scottsdale and Tempe. It broke ground in April 12th, 2003 and opened August 1st, 2006. It took around 3 years of construction. How it was financed, Cardinals paid for 25% of the stadium's cost, and Tourism and Sports Authority paid for 75%. Like I mentioned, it's home to the Arizona Cardinals, and the seating capacity is around 63,400. Some past events to be hosted here. It hosted 3 Super Bowls, 2 March Madness tournaments, college football games, soccer matches, and more. And then some future events for 2024 include the AMA Supercross event, soccer matches, and concerts as well.
Thanks, Jack. And we'll end up in the Northwest.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robbie, and I was tasked with Lumen Field. It's undergone a couple of names since it was built in 2002. It was originally called Seahawks Stadium until 2004, where the name changed to Quest Field. In 2011, it changed again to CenturyLink Field, and it finally settled on Lumen Field in 2020. So this was a $430 million facility, and it's owned publicly. It was funded, but it was funded privately and publicly, with private contributions from the owner being $130 million, while the public contributed up to $300 million. Some of those public funds came from sales tax, which generated $101 million, and $56 million of that was from facility admission and parking taxes. In terms of who plays here, it is the home to the Seattle Seahawks, an MLS soccer team, and an NWSL soccer team. The stadium also hosts events like every other stadium does, with concerts and everything, and it was also a host venue. It is also going to be a host venue for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The future is bright for Lumen Field, and the owner's commitment to being a top stadium continues with continuous improvements, such as things he calls fan ovations. There's going to be a T-Mobile end zone, which is a sports bar with 11 60-inch TVs. They're getting new LED boards in the north and south end zones and an upgraded sound system. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. You've listened to our whirlwind tour of the NFL. We hope you've found it informative. I'd like to thank my panelists and presenters because they did an incredible amount of work sharing a lot of information and hopefully giving people a perspective on how every city and area tends to find its own way of bundling together financing and uses of the particular venue. And with that said, I'm going to stop screen sharing and we'll see what's out there in the questionville.
Yes, a special thank you to Dr. Welki and his students for putting together, I believe, 27 different stadiums, 27 completely different setups, if you will. Dr. Welke, we do have some questions in the Q&A.
Sure.
One of them is an excellent point. The stadiums all seem to have been built around a similar time frame, minus one or two of them. What do you think accounts for the large discrepancies in the cost to build? Do you think it's something to do with seating capacity, additional features? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I guess I would argue it's probably differences in terms of the amount of sort of technology that's going to be involved in a field. For example, if you're just building sort of an open air stadium, that's one thing. But if we look at a stadium like I think it was Mr. Frittinger was talking about, or no, who was the one that had Atlanta? I think it was you, Mason, where they got like roofs that retract and all this other stuff. That just becomes prohibitively costly, or not prohibitively, but certainly becomes more expensive. But I think that's where sort of the usage of the stadium comes in. If we're using something that's going to be 8 events a year with a couple of concerts, the value proposition speaks to one cost level. If I'm going to be able to use it 300 times a year and host major NCAA events, World Cup kinds of things, these all make the investment a little bit more logical to go deeper into the pocket.
And I think you make an excellent point there about the value proposition for stadiums, because if you think about it, there's some NFL stadiums like what was mentioned there where you notice some get more usage from other alternative methods than others might. And some of that might be due to having a not so modern stadium, or some of it might just be because one team just uses that stadium a few times a year.
Sure.
Now, Dr. Welki, you and I talked yesterday briefly about this whole thing, and you had no idea what trends there were going to be based on what the students presented. But I want to kind of get your thoughts off the top of your head. What's maybe one or two things that you noticed after these students' presentations that maybe you didn't realize, or maybe something that you really thought going in?
Well, I think one of the trends that's kind of interesting to me is the amount of these stadiums that are sort of increasingly becoming a little bit more privately funded as part of something much bigger. So if you look at SoFi, for example, this is what, a $5 billion investment. So if I'm a person in that kind of stratosphere of wealth, I'm thinking of all the other stuff that's going around it. So if I remember correctly, Carson, it was like 280 acres of space around that was going to be turned into hotels and other things. Would you elaborate just a little bit?
Yeah, what I found was it was kind of like an open piece of land that they built, and they kind of built it in like what we see in Canton, how they're just expanding around the Hall of Fame. They're just expanding it into a whole kind of like city with restaurants and a nightlife around the stadium.
Yeah, great point. And I think you've seen it happen a little bit in the Cleveland area with the decision to move the baseball stadium from where it was the old municipal stadium to where it is right now, that it becomes an anchor for a real estate development with other activity building around. And so in that particular space, I could easily imagine wealthy real estate types wanting to put a stake in the ground that becomes a magnet for all the other stuff that it will draw to the space.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think that the move that they're proposing or that they've announced, I can see that investors moving from Cleveland because the stadium's no longer there. Therefore, the visitors or the attraction that Cleveland gets will be, less than it used to be. So that could be a reason why there's a lot of controversy around it.
Sure. Great point, Kevin. I think just the idea of, is this going to be just a stadium renovation for that event, or is this become sort of some kind of a centerpiece of a bigger project to bring more development to the Brook Park area and other kinds of things that might be drawn that would surround that area?
This has been a great presentation and discussion. There's another question here, Dr. Welki. Why do you believe in all sports that they're having more issues securing public funding for newer or remodeled stadiums?
I think it's a great question. I think part of it might be sort of geographic areas. I think some of these areas that we're talking about are areas that might be older. And because they're older, the rates of growth and demographics, population living in different kinds of spaces, they're not as willing to, and they don't necessarily have the same levels of income growth as other parts of the country. So in some ways, it's a little bit like retail. And we could imagine that stadium owners are always looking for better, for worse, their best deal. And so you've seen, well, if we look at SoFi, SoFi was originally in St. Louis, and St. Louis's loss became Los Angeles's win. But Los Angeles for a long time was without a sort of a professional football team, just simply because of their unwillingness to build new stadiums. So there's really this leverage situation, as if you will, between who has more power in these spaces, the city itself and the role that they play, as well as the owners who have the ability in some ways to be footloose and fancy free if there's somebody else that wants to put something up for them.
To expand on Dr. Welke's response, I see a lot of local governments having issues believing in teams, and we're seeing teams with a lack of loyalty to these cities and are very free to move on and try to maximize profits rather than making a community impact. Therefore, it might not seem a worthy investment to invest in a new stadium through taxpayer dollars based on teams being so, very free to leave and go from city to city based on where the money is.
Well, to build on Michael's point, they award franchises to ownership groups, and the ownership groups make their arrangements for whatever city they want. And then if they're for want of a better term, very crappily run organization and can't put a good product on the field and attendance falls, they then use that as leverage as to why they want to move. And it would be much more fascinating to me if the NFL awarded cities the franchises and people could come in and run the franchise in that space, so that if they are a bad management group and can't make money in a particular city, they sell it as a loss and somebody else comes in who might be able to run it better, and it's not the city itself that gets hung out to dry by putting chips in the pot.
I tell you what, you have my vote as future NFL commissioner, Dr. Welki. That'd be a fun title for you to add to your resume.
I guess.
We also have, this isn't a question, but this is a comment. I did not know this. John Carroll played a football game in Wisconsin several years ago, and they were able to do a walkthrough, and they were able to walk through at Soldier Field in Chicago because the head of the Chicago Park District at the time was a John Carroll graduate. So that kind of goes to show the expansive network of John Carroll alums. Not necessarily working in the NFL, but working for the place that's kind of housing Soldier Field. That's pretty cool.
Sure. Good stuff.
Okay, well, that pretty much does it for our program this evening. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Welki, for taking the time to be part of.
Panelists get all the love.
Yeah, panelists did a fantastic job tonight. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This program has been recorded, and once the event ends, it will be stored in my Zoom, and I will be able to upload it where it'll be freely available on our YouTube channel in the very near future. Thank you once again to everybody, and have a great holiday season.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good one.